Right. And we can now officially launch this event. Colleagues, Excellencies, dear colleagues, good afternoon to who is with us here at the International Environment House, and good morning, good afternoon, or good evening to who is with us on WebEx or is now watching the video of this event. The Geneva Environment Network has the pleasure to welcome you today for an event co-organized with the Geneva Roadmap 4011 for environmental human rights defenders. Our session today intends to amplify the call for the release of for Niloufar Bayani and her fellow environmental conservationists. Last 24 January marked the 5th year of the detention of 8 Iranian scientists of the Persian Wildlife Heritage Foundation. As the Iranian authorities seem to be currently pardoning or commuting the sentences of a large number of prisoners as part of an annual amnesty, pressure is growing internationally and in Iran for these 8 scientists to be included in it. One of the scientists of this group is Niloufar Bayani, a friend and colleague of many of us here at the International Environment House in Geneva, where she worked as a consultant for the United Nations Environment Programme. Her smile and good energy enlightened the corridors of our building. This young Iranian brought with her international expertise. She studied at McGill University in Montreal and Columbia University in New York, and worked with us here in Geneva from 2012 to 2017. She had returned to Iran to serve her country and advance its biodiversity conservation. And I can personally testify, as can many of us today, who are with us today, that as other international civil servants, Niloufar was missing her beloved home country and was very happy to go back to Iran and work there as a conservationist. Various experts who have been very vocal on the case of Niloufar and her colleagues are joining us in today's session to discuss the importance of protecting those who protect nature and why releasing Niloufar and her fellow environmental conservationists detained in Iran matters for the global environment. Before I turn to our guests and colleagues, let me remind you that the statements presented, the summary, as well as the video of the event will be made available on the webpage of this event. The link is being shared in the chat and on the screen. Throughout the event, those who are online can raise their questions by using the Q&A box. We will use your questions to feed the discussion after the presentation, if time allows. I'm now turning to our guests, and we will start by a statement by the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and the Environment, David Boyd. David is based in Vancouver, where it's very early in the morning. He has therefore recorded his statement last night. We will then proceed with statements, and I will be introducing the speakers as I give them the floor. So let's start by hearing what David has to share with us.
Hello from Canada. I'm Dr. David Boyd, the United Nations Special Rapporteur on Human Rights and the Environment. More than 5 years ago, Ms. Niloufar Bayani and 8 of her colleagues were arrested in Iran. At the time, they were working for the Persian Wildlife Heritage Foundation on a project to try and save the critically endangered Asiatic cheetah. Ms. Bayani was convicted and sentenced to 10 years in prison on those charges of espionage, and the time has come for her release. I join hands with my colleagues from across the United Nations in calling for the immediate release of Ms. Niloufar Bayani and her colleagues so that they may rejoin their families and return to their important work. As you know, the world faces a triple planetary crisis, and at this time, we need everyone with the qualifications and experience and expertise of people like Ms. Bayani to help protect this beautiful planet that we all call home. Thank you very much.
With our thanks to David and his team, we now move for our next statement. Our colleague Angela Kariuki, who is a legal officer at the Law Division of the United Nations Environment Programme, and who has been vocal at the Human Rights Council and in other forums on this case, will now take the floor.
Good afternoon, everyone, and thank you very much, Diana and the Geneva Environment Network colleagues for pulling this event so quickly together. It's a great honor to speak today and to share a few words supporting the call for the release of Niloufar Bayani and her fellow environmental conservationists. I think I only have a couple of minutes, so let me get right into it. The case of the prolonged imprisonment of Niloufar has hit really very close to home for us at the United Nations Environment Programme. As Diana mentioned at the start, Niloufar worked with UNEP for around 5 years based out of our Geneva office, and colleagues who work directly with her are participating in the room today and are also connected to the event. Her work and her publications on working with communities to build climate and disaster resilience really demonstrated her deep commitment to environmental issues and are well known not only within the organization, but also outside of it. And it was only 1 year after leaving UNEP and returning to her home country that she was imprisoned, along with others, while undertaking a conservation project. It's heartening, really, to know that Niloufar continues her environmental research and scientific writing while in prison. It also brought a smile to many of our faces to learn that she recently established a climate seminar series that's aimed at increasing climate literacy and awareness on climate change issues in Iran. We learned also that she conducted a survey within her ward to understand the levels of climate awareness and understanding of its implications. And the results of the survey spurred her to begin a series of climate seminars where she has prepared briefing materials on posters and also established focus groups within the prison to work and to reflect further on the climate issue. In addition, she's also published articles where she reflects on the impacts of the COVID pandemic and the importance of changing our destructive relationship with nature. These actions and her activities are illustrative of her passion, her expertise, and her genuine interest in contributing viable solutions to addressing the interconnected crises facing our planet today. And she's demonstrated this even in the face of great adversity. Environmental conservationists all over the world are key supporters of contributing solutions to the triple planetary crises and also advancing sustainable development. Supporting their work is important, and violence and threats against conservationists, as well as arrests and detention, are not only a human rights issue, but they also diminish the potential for achieving environmentally agreed goals and commitments. This has become even more salient since the recognition of the human right to a healthy environment. For UNEP, it's clear that people need to know more about the right to a healthy environment and how to safely exercise this right, because anyone can become an environmental defender. We say this many times, because many do, due to circumstance rather than by design. In promoting greater protection for environmental defenders, UNEP joins many others in the international community and the UN system in responding directly to the 3 pillars of the UN and the UN Secretary General's call to action for human rights. As many of you may know, our Executive Director, Inga Anderson, yesterday released a statement on this matter. And in her statement, she noted that it's already been 5 years since the detainment of Niloufar Bayani. And over these last 5 years, UNEP leadership has communicated with authorities in Tehran, in addition to submitting concerns to them in writing. Niloufar has spent these 5 years in prison, and we continue to be devastated that she remains imprisoned for her work on environmental conservation. We also take note and warmly welcome the pardons that were recently issued by the Iranian authorities. So before closing, the United Nations Environment Programme joins many, many others in renewing its call for clemency and for the release of Niloufar, and indeed of all the environmental conservationists who are imprisoned in Iran. In carrying out our work with environmental defenders, with environmental activists, and other conservationists, we're also constantly reminding ourselves that the UN was created not only to respond to the needs of member states and to collaborate with them towards addressing environmental issues, but also to protect people who are at the front line of conservation, even when others are unable to do so. Thanks very much. Back to you, Diana.
Thank you very much, Angela. Moving on with the statements, our colleagues from the International Union for Conservation of Nature, known as IUCN, could not join us in person, but issued a statement this morning, which I will now read. Following the pardons issued recently by the Iranian authorities, the International Union for Conservation of Nature, IUCN, renews its call for the release of IUCN member conservationists imprisoned in Iran since 2018. 5 of the imprisoned environmentalists are from IUCN member organization Persian Wildlife Heritage Foundation: Niloufar Bayani, Taher Gaïdiran, Sepiesh Kashani, Ouman Jokar, and Morad Tabaz. Taher Gadirian and Ouman Jokar are members of the IUCN Species Survival Commission, CAT Specialist Group. Taher Gadirian is also a member of the IUCN Beer Specialist Group. The Persian Wildlife Heritage Foundation conservationists were detained alongside 4 others, including Amir Hossein Kaleki, member of the IUCN CAT Specialist Group, of the IUCN Commission on Education and Communication, and of the IUCN World Commission on Protected Areas. IUCN issued a statement of solidarity with them in 2018 and again in 2019, and continues to appeal for their release. The link for this statement is available on the webpage of this event and is being shared in the chat for who is online now with us. Our next statement is from Yves Lador, who is sitting here at the International Environment House with us. Yves is an independent consultant. He is also the representative of Earth Justice to the United Nations office in Geneva and co-leading the Geneva Roadmap 4011 for environmental human rights defenders. Yves, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Diana. Let me also thank all of the previous statements which were formulated here in this event. Let me start to say at the outset that, of course, all human rights violations in all regions need our attention. And of course, all defenders, human rights defenders, again from all regions, also need this. But unfortunately, we see today a very worrying trend of an increased violation of human rights against environmental human rights defenders. So why such a focus right now? Well, the reasons, as it has been said, for the arrest of Mrs. Bayani and her other scientist colleagues are unfortunately, as it has been said, very close to the basic practice that everybody has to do in international and intergovernmental organizations or international non-governmental organizations. So it becomes a real danger for all of us if our basic practice starts to be criminalized. It's also a challenge for scientists because, of course, in the field, we need to collect information. We have to go to the regions. We need to talk with the people, and we need to share widely this information. This is a basic element of scientific work. And this is exactly what we need in order to meet the challenges of climate change and biodiversity loss or pollution. So if we go forward, and if we think we can go forward without an independent science, which is guaranteed by all states and for all organizations, that means that we would be left in the dark. So what we're focusing here is not just an individual case, but also all what goes with what is at stake with these individual cases. Now, the Human Rights Council, very aware of these challenges, adopted the resolution 4011 for the protection of environmental human rights defenders. So activities in the field of environment protection, which includes monitoring what is happening in the field, to see what are the environmental trends, to do reports and to share this with others, is absolutely crucial and must be protected by all states. This resolution was adopted by consensus, full consensus, by the Human Rights Council. This is why we are developing with a number of NGOs, IGOs, and states a roadmap to make sure that this resolution is implemented. And today, we are calling Iran to implement this resolution fully. As it has been said, and in the particular circumstances right now today in Iran, Mrs. Bayani and all of her colleagues must be released. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Yves. So we have now finished with the statements part of this event, and I'm turning to the other colleagues who are the former supervisors of Niloufar here in Geneva. I'm turning to them before we turn to our guests, to our other guests, to ask them if they would like to add something to what was mentioned. So I'm turning to, on my left, to Henrik, and on my right to Marisol. And I refer to Henrik Slate.
Thank you. Yeah, and I would like to share some reflections because Niloufar worked with us. She was a colleague. She worked within the team I was in charge of. And as was mentioned here, Niloufar grew up in Iran. She went to school in Iran, but then she studied abroad at well-recognized universities, firstly in Canada, where she had a bachelor degree, and then in the US, where she obtained her master's degree. In parallel with her studies, she did a lot of research work, and she worked as an assistant at both universities. And she joined our team here in Geneva in 2012. She came as a young environmentalist, very talented, very enthusiastic, highly appreciated within the team. She worked not only here in Geneva, she also was many times ready to work in the field. Our team worked in what we call hardship duty stations, where life is extremely challenging even for UN colleagues, but she did this willingly, and she did it many times. In 2017, she decided that she wanted to return home to Iran. She wanted to give back. She had this excellent university education. She had 5 years with the United Nations, and she wanted to return to her native Iran to work for the environment, the nature, the wildlife. And it's naturally then absurd that she ended up in prison in Iran when what she wanted to do was give back and work for her country, her environment, her wildlife. The situation we are in now brings us somewhat hope, as many prisoners have been released recently, even this very week. And on behalf of the United Nations Environment Programme, we plead that also Niloufar and her colleagues, the other environmentalists who are suffering and who are still in prison, that they are released, which would be the right thing to do. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Henrik. It's now a time where we can exchange on the statements that were made and the testimonies we have heard. So I'm turning to who is online with us and to who is in the room, asking if anybody would like to take the floor or to raise a question. I don't see any questions in the box, but if any, our experts are happy to answer the questions you would have. And I can also remind who is online with us and who is in the room with us that the statements that were made are available on the webpage of this event, so you will be able to access them. I think our call was very clear. Looking at the other members of our panel, anything you would like to add?
No.
Your mic is still open.
Just to add on what has just been said by Mr. Slote, Iran is right now, it seems that the Iranian authorities are indeed preparing for a number of celebrations. And in that perspective, are setting a number of people free in the current circumstances. And again, because on the basis of what had been adopted by the Human Rights Council on a consensus basis, it seems absolutely necessary and logical that Niloufar and her colleagues, I insist for all of them, to be freed in this perspective. We can always discuss afterwards the reasons, if they were really legitimate for such an arrest. Obviously, they seem not to have been, and it seemed that there was discussions among the Iranian authorities even on that issue. So definitely, they should be included in the current amnesty. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Reid. People are asking online, what can individuals and organizations do to support Niloufar and her fellow environmental conservationists? I have personally seen calls, online calls, petitions being circulated to show how the number of people who are supporting the release of these people. Is there anything else that we could mention here? We will, of course, this is something that we will see if we can also share on the website. It's some of those petitions that people and institutions can join. So we will maybe not in the chat now, but on the webpage of the event, because we need to assess and make sure we share all of them. So don't hesitate to go back in the next hours. They will be posted there. Is there anything we can mention here? Maybe Angela? And Yves also, you came back on the initiative, on the roadmap, the Geneva roadmap. This is also, we have posted on the webpage of this event what this Geneva roadmap is about, what are the institutions that are member of this roadmap. But this is also, I think, a starting point. But first I give the floor to Angela and then we come back to Yves.
Thanks so much.
To add on that point? Yes, go ahead.
Sorry, can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Okay, thank you, Diana. I think what you've already mentioned in terms of circulating the petition that's already going around, I think that's one key thing that people outside can do to support this call, is to raise awareness, share as far and as wide as you can, because as Yves mentioned, that this arrest came on the back of legitimate activities that were being carried out, and so we just want to raise awareness about the plight of environmental defenders across all regions, and also the fact that the right to a healthy environment is now recognized, and we call on member states to actually start to implement this right where they're not already doing so. So just to support what you've already said, Diana, more public awareness, more sharing of information, as well as the petition that's just started circulating today. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Angela. I'm turning to Yves. Maybe you want to add something on what you already mentioned on the roadmap and some of the institutions.
I mean, let's stay focused on the case here. So I didn't want to get into more detail, but it's true that we are going to discuss about this issue of environmental defenders at the coming session of the Human Rights Council, starting in a few weeks. We are doing this actually in the framework of the 25th anniversary of the Human Rights Council Declaration on Human Rights Defenders. The environmental human rights defenders are one of these categories of people who use their rights and get involved for the promotion of their own societies, being for the protection of women's rights, children's rights, or on environmental issues. And people who are starting to use their rights for the improvement of their own situation and for the situation of their own country need to be particularly protected so that they can carry this on. And as it was said before, the challenge we have in the field of environment makes it absolutely crucial that everybody can carry on its activities in the field of environment, can spread information, that we can have open discussions This is absolutely basic to have independent science, and this is what we rely on in order to find solutions for these challenges. So it's absolutely a crucial issue. It's not a small isolated case, as it was just said. It really is an issue for all of us. So again, in the current circumstances, we are calling the Iranian authorities in the framework of the 25th anniversary of the Declaration of Environmental Defenders for the implementation of Resolution 4011. We are once again asking them to release these people and to release them now in the coming days.
Thank you very much, Yves, and thank you very much, Angela. I have now shared in the chat the link of one of the recent petitions that was issued, but keep coming back to the webpage of the event for other resources that do exist on this case and on other cases. I'm turning again to the other colleagues who are in the room in case somebody wants to add something. I don't see any other comments coming up. I think the message is very clear. So I'm giving 30 seconds to each of you to deliver a last statement before we close the event. And we will start by Angela, who is online, and then we will go back to the room.
Thank you so much, Diana. I actually do not have anything further to add to what I've already said, but again, just reiterating our call for Niloufar's release. Thank you so much.
Yves?
Yeah, thank you. Same thing. We would really like to see to have the possibility in the coming weeks in the Human Rights Council to be able to officially thank Iran for this release in the coming weeks.
Thank you, Yves. And Henrik?
For those who are asking what they can do, as Diana said, there is the petition online. That is one way. Another thing that is very important is that Niloufar and other environmentalists who are in prison, that they feel that we remember them. They are not forgotten. And still in these times of social media, I would nevertheless encourage all of you to write letters. The name of Niloufar, the name of her colleagues, and the name of the prison, Tehran, Iran. It is not that likely that they will receive them, but you never know. And at least it is a very strong sign to the authorities that people outside of Iran, all over the world, remember these environmentalists and want to reach out to them, want to remind the outside world that this is not the way it should be, and they have friends, they have colleagues who are in touch and are waiting for the day when they will be released. So please be active, social media, traditional letters, whatever you feel is the right way of reaching out. On one hand to the authorities, on the other one to those who are imprisoned. Thank you.
Thank you, Henrik. Indeed, and this was our way also of giving visibility to this case. So we, as Henrik just said, we encourage you all to reach out and we hope for the best in the next hours or days. Without, we are closing this session and just reminding you that the statements and the useful resources that were mentioned are being shared on the webpage of the event. So go back there if you need those to push forward your messages. Thank you very much for being with us today.